Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have installment number 4 of Ramsey's ramblings on discontinued fragrances. And the name Ramsey's Ramblings was given to me by one of my subscribers. And so it's a great little snapshot into the way that this channel has grown because so much of it is little bits and pieces that you guys have kind of thrown my way. And I'm always open to doing videos based on recommendations or implementing fragrances that you guys want me to talk about if I can, if I have the juice. If not, people have sent me samples and stuff that I've been able to, talk about on the channel, doing early impressions and stuff like that. So it's a real great community. It's a great tribe that we have here, if you will. And this idea about Ramsey's ramblings on discontinued fragrances is just another way that I can kind of talk about one of my favorite topics in the fragrance world, which is discontinued or reformulated fragrances. And the reason that this got started, I'm actually going to do a fresh spray, so I have it here, is for the very first time, I'm wearing a long discontinued fragrance, and it's from the house of Basile, which they were like a drugstore Italian brand back in the 80s, and they had a hit. Actually, let me grab the hit. I've already talked about this fragrance on one of the Ramsey's ramblings on discontinued fragrances on one of the earlier 3 episodes, which there is a playlist, by the way. So if you go to the playlist, hit Ramsey's ramblings, and you can see the other videos. I'll add this one to it once it's uploaded today. But the original was this, Basile Uomo, which is like a chiffre slash fougere blended together. It reminds me a little bit of Paco Rabanne pour Homme, but this is a vintage where Ruska and Joel is the distributor. Again, I already talked about this one, but the flanker that we're talking about today came out in the late 80s, 1989 actually, and it's called Basile Uomo Forte, okay? Now, usually the Forte means stronger, and this fragrance is not necessarily stronger than its original founder. So Basile Uomo is probably just as strong as Basile Uomo Forte, but it's a completely different fragrance. So, sometimes they'll do a flanker, and it's like an intense version or whatever it is. This is completely different. These are 2 totally different fragrances. The only bits and pieces that they share are some of the green notes. So this has a lot of artemisia and rosemary and stuff like that. And this has a little bit of those green touches as well. There's artemisia, there's balsam firs here, but it's offset. It is set against a oriental base. Okay, so that oriental base makes it a completely different fragrance. Some have compared it to the grandfather of the oriental fougere, which is Pierre Cardin's Pour Monsieur from 1972 in the bottle that looks like either a microphone or, if you've ever been to Dallas, it has that building with the with the lights on top. It's a ball, it rotates. There's a restaurant on top of it. It'll remind you of all different types of things. But this was kind of the grandfather in 1972. And this style I really like. Some people say it can lean a little bit old manish because it has that mature vibe to it. I don't find that at all. I can wear fragrances like this all day and have no problems. It probably, if you're seasonally specific, it probably should be for maybe a little cooler weather. It's 100 degrees here in Texas today, and I'm wearing it. I'm in the AC. I have no problems. This is a tester bottle that I got from Aoud, so I have no cap, but unfortunately, I don't really care. But I will show you the distributor. And the distributor, as you can see, is Sirpea. We'll say Sirpea. I don't know how you pronounce it. Sirpea, Sirpea, S-P-A, which, so there are also Sirpea bottles of Basile Uomo floating around. Now, I wouldn't recommend, if you're going to hunt down the original, I wouldn't recommend paying top dollar for the Serpy version, even though it's older, because what ended up happening is Weruska and Joel decided to keep it in-house. So they decided to keep the creation of the fragrance in-house rather than outsourcing it. But when they took it in-house, they didn't take all of Basile's fragrances, and this one got left out, okay? So the only thing you really have to worry about when you buy vintage Basile Uomo, the original, is that it has a short ingredient list, okay? So as long as you only see alcohol, water, and parfum, you're good. Whether the distributor is Joel, Weruska and Joel, or whether it's Serpy, does not matter. The reason that there are only bottles of Serpy, of the Basile Uomo Forte floating around, is that Weruska and Joel didn't pick up the license for this fragrance. They let it die. Okay, so only Serpy bottles are floating around. There is no Weruska and Joel versions of Basile Uomo Forte floating around. So if you buy this fragrance, you will be buying a Serpy bottle. But what I like about it is you get some of that old school vintage masculine feel. You know, there's some of that, those green touches, like I said. It's a little bit floral with the carnation. There's also rose and jasmine. And it is contrasted with the warmth of cinnamon and sandalwood and cedar, patchouli. There's a little bit of cistus labdanum in the base to give it that oriental, you know, that warmth, that oriental warmth that you expect. There's also a little bit of vanilla, but it's never too sweet, and there's a little bit of masculine vetiver and even a little bit of olibanum. But the olibanum, the frankincense is, you know, it's not like you're going to smell a frankincense fragrance. You're smelling an oriental fragrance that's almost spliced with a old school masculine fougere. Is it worth hunting down a bottle? Well, I paid about $30 for this, so at 30 bucks, yes. At $130, like the one bottle that's left on eBay that I just saw, I would probably say no, unless you are, you know, a big fan or a collector, if you want to have them both, you know, or whatever it is. But, you know, it has to be price specific. It's a good fragrance. The ingredients are very good, especially for a drugstore brand. I mean, we're going back to the 80s, early 90s, and, you know, what they used to use back then as far as quality of ingredients and stuff like that goes is, you know, it's comparable to even some niche fragrances today, I would say. The quality of the ingredients just in a drugstore fragrance back then, it's unbelievable, actually. This does not smell cheap to me at all. But if you have a lot of these types of fragrances in your collection already, if you already own stuff like Pierre Cardin Pour Monsieur, maybe it's not worth shelling out the big bucks for it. But keep it on the radar. If you get a good deal, I do think it's worth going after if you're a vintage hunter like myself. Okay, so from a vintage fragrance from the 80s to a fragrance that just got released in 2018 and is already discontinued. This is Roja's Majestic Aoud Parfum. Now, I've talked about this fragrance a little bit. I'm going to do a full review very soon, and I have multiple versions of this fragrance. This is what Roja's old, you know, Discovery atomizers used to look like. They used to just come in this little box that you would open up, and there would be the sample inside. Now they look like this. This is the newer version of his Discovery atomizers. They open up. There's this padded, you know, felt right here to protect it. It's got the box, the outer sleeve that kind of protects it, if you will. It's got the gold around the outside. So they've improved the presentation on the Discovery atomizers. But Majestic Aoud Parfum was actually in one of the expensive lines. It was up there with Roja's Haut Luxe, or Roja's Great Britain. You know, the presentations that look like this that go for $2,000 with the purple caps. Majestic Aoud was in that that lineup of fragrances, okay? It was in that tier, that top tier of fragrances. And you know me, I mean, I have basically made this channel all about calling it like it is, and I'm not going to go into the details of it because I want to do a full review on it. I wore this multiple days when I was in Arizona on our trip, and so you can see I put a pretty good dent in it. I wore it 2 days in a row. I've worn it multiple times before. I'll wear it again as my scent of the day, and I will talk about it very soon. But in a nutshell, it's basically this spicy, floral. It's supposed to be an animalic oud. The way that Roja describes it is, imagine walking into a Middle Eastern palace where they're burning the best quality oud oil. You know, they're burning bachor in the palace, and this is the smell that you get. That's what it's supposed to be. I don't get that. In fact, I can totally see why they discontinued this, because when you put this up against the real oud fragrances, this just doesn't compete, you know, at whatever it was, $1,800 a bottle or whatever Roja was selling this for. It doesn't compete with Bortnikov or Arise Ladore or, you know, any of those real oud fragrances. I mean, even the night wipes the floor with Majestic Aoud. So when I think something is worth it, like Diaghilev or Great Britain, I will sing its praises and I will talk about it. But when I think something is, you know, they're trying to pull a fast one on you, they're trying to pull an okie doke, they're trying to take advantage of you, I will also say that. And I don't think Majestic Aoud is worth it. But we will talk more about that in another video. But it is discontinued, and so I did want to add it to the list because I'm going to make a list of the Ramsey's ramblings on discontinued fragrances. And, you know, I want to check them off the list, the ones that I've talked about, so you guys can kind of see it all in one place. So I wanted to have Roja's Majestic Aoud on the list. The only one I've talked about from him that's discontinued, that's on the Ramsey's Ramblings list, is Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So now we're adding Majestic Aoud to the list, and I will be talking about that one more very soon. Okay, now we're going to go back to vintage, which is where, you know, my heart belongs. And we're going to go to the year 1986, 1 year after I was born. And we're going to talk about a fragrance from the house of Marbert. Now, Marbert has a couple fragrances I absolutely love. Marbert, we'll talk about the house some more. But this is called Marbert Gentleman. And this is what the bottle looks like. This is actually the eau de toilette in this little half, you know, oval sunrise looking bottle. And this is the aftershave. And I got these from Aoud, and Aoud was kind enough to throw in the aftershave when you buy the, when I bought the eau de toilette. So again, one of the advantages of working with someone like Aoud is sometimes you get these little perks. And this fragrance is very interesting to me. It's challenging. It is a animalic musk fragrance is basically the way that I would describe this. I think musk, civet, and olibanum are the star notes. But, you know, if you like fragrances like Musk Kublai Khan, if you like those really animalic, musky fragrances, this is one to check out because this takes that DNA, that animalic, musky DNA with heavy civet or whatever they're using here. I don't know if they're using real civet in the vintage. One little note, since this is all about, you know, versions and distributors and stuff like that. This is the Made in West Germany bottle. How about that for a picture? Made in West Germany. I love it. So before the fall of the Berlin Wall, this was made in West Germany. It does open a little bit green. There's some galbanum, there's some artemisia and tarragon, stuff like that. The citruses just get swallowed up instantly by the animalic notes, the musks. There's even a resinous French labdanum note in the base that, you know, really plays off of the olibanum. But it's really about that musk. I mean, if you don't like musk, if you don't like musky perfumes, I would say probably stay away from this. But, you know, if you can wear stuff like Koros, okay? If you can wear stuff like, you know, some of the 80s fragrances that have a little bit of bite to them. If you can wear Rapport by Schulten, those kind of perfumes that have a little bit of bite. If you can wear fragrances like Antaeus, even though it's completely different, I would say check out Marbert Gentleman if you like those kind of fragrances. And to have the aftershave is cool because you can shave, splash on the aftershave, and then hit yourself with the eau de toilette as well. And the oak moss in the base is absolutely beautiful when it mixes with that musk. I think there's also a little bit of a leathery note, and I don't know if that comes from, you know, the labdanum. Sometimes labdanum can be a little bit resinous, leathery, or, you know, if they've added a leather note to the composition as well. But again, star of the show to me is that musk. So not many people talk about these old Marbert fragrances, and I think it's a fantastic house. I think what they did in the past, they have another one that we'll talk about very soon as well. But they've got some gems. Some of these old Marberts are absolutely amazing. Okay, now we're going to go to a Gerard Anthony creation, and he's one of my favorite old school perfumers. I mean, his resume is off the charts. He did Azzaro Pour Homme. He did Balenciaga Pour Homme. He did Iquitos from Alain Delon. And he also did this little beauty, which is one of his fragrances that you can really wear in summer. He also did Salvador Dali's Le Roi Soleil Homme. If you look up Salvador Dali's fragrances, you'll see Le Roi Soleil. It's the Homme. It's the masculine version of that, which is like a fresh 90s fragrance. He did this in the 90s too, but this is much more my style than the fresh Salvador Dali fragrance that he did. And this is called Homme de Grès. Sorry for the fingerprints. This is a 75 ml bottle. And this is a very dry fragrance. If you like fragrances that have no sweetness in them at all, check out Homme de Grès. Homme de Grès has literally zero sweetness, maybe negative sweetness in it. And it's got this citrusy basil opening. It's beautiful in the spring and summer, is usually when I like to wear this. Citrus, basil. There is a little bit of resins, but it's really about this smoky oak moss and this leather in the base, but not heavy leather. It's a dry, I would say bitter oak moss. If you like bitter and you like fragrances that, this fragrance almost feels like the lavender note is embellished, right? So there is lavender in the note listing according to base notes, but there is not lavender in the note listing according to Parfumo. So lavender is kind of one of those things in this fragrance that I'm not really sure on. If I had to trust my nose, I would say yes, there's a little bit of lavender in here, but the way that it's used is brilliant. And that smoky oak moss. Oh, I know what smoky oak moss fragrance it reminds me of. If you like, not the fragrance itself, but just the smoky, you know, base. If you like fragrances like Francesco Smalto Pour Homme, right? That green, dry, Italian, leathery base with loads of oak moss. This has this dry oak moss in the base. It's absolutely stunning in summer, and it goes completely against the grain of what's popular. So if you like to be like me, if all the salmon are swimming this way, and you like to be the one fish that swims against the stream, this is beautiful in spring and summer. While everyone else is wearing Sauvage and Versace Eros and all that crap they wear nowadays, you will be standing out. Absolutely, you would be standing out. Homme de Grès is, for a Gerard Anthony fan like I am, it's a must-have. You know, I can't put it up there with Balenciaga pour Homme or Akitos or Azaro pour Homme. I mean, you can't put it up there with some of the greatest creations he ever made, but it is totally a Gerard Anthony creation. And, you know, if you were putting it head to head with his other late 90s creation, here, I'll just show you the bottle, by the way, while we're talking about it. This is the bottle I'm talking about. This is Le Roi Soleil Homme. Okay, he made this. This is like a strange, it's like this fresh, but not really aquatic, maybe a little floral thing that he did in the 90s. It almost smells a little dirty from the get-go, almost like you're smelling a little bit of cumin or something, you know, something that he started out the fragrance a little bit challenging, but then it goes into this fresh 90s thing, which I don't care for as much. That came out in the mid to late 90s, and so did this. This is my favorite of the two by far. So Homme de Grès, and this has not been hyped, by the way. So you can still find bottles of Homme de Grès at a relatively decent price. Don't worry about the distributor. Parfums Grès is the distributor on this one, but the distributor doesn't matter. I mean, this was discontinued so quickly that any bottle you can find is going to be fantastic, in my opinion. Little sip of Topo Chico. I usually don't like drinking stuff like that, but we've got a million of them out there that need to be used. So that's what happens when you shop at Costco. Okay. Next, I'm going to show you the Eau de Toilette version of, I'm going to show you the Eau de Parfum version, but I also have the Eau de Toilette. Either one you can find are absolutely amazing. And, you know, one thing that I want to say is if you watch my channel regularly, you've probably seen a lot of these bottles. You know, I am a independent person. I'm not a company. You know, I don't have access to unlimited amount of funds to just go buy bottles. These are bottles from my collection. I shouldn't have drank that. It's got bubbles in it. It's going to make me burp. Excuse me. But, you know, you've probably seen these fragrances before. But I wanted to do this Ramsey Ramblings videos to kind of put the discontinued fragrances in my collection in one place. And then you can watch it on a playlist if you want. But I have a master list of the ones I've talked about and the ones I haven't talked about on Ramsey's Ramblings. Now, I've probably talked about them before in other places, but it's just a way to kind of, you know, bring everything together. So this is called Krazy Krizia, and this is the Eau de Parfum, which is a splash. The Eau de Toilette, which I own, is a spray. They're both absolutely amazing. The Eau de Parfum, you know, if you're going to wear it in winter and you're going to wear this in cooler weather, look at this. The Eau de Parfum is probably better for this is a true Eau de Toilette, Eau de Parfum, where, you know, one concentration is just a little bit lighter, one's just a little bit heavier, but they both are the same fragrance, clearly the same fragrance. And this was made by Dominique Ropion, who Rich Mitch just said he was a Pierre Bourdon disciple. I've never heard that. If anyone knows any more information on that, I would love to hear more about that. But Dominique Ropion made this, and he made it in the early 90s, 1991. And what came out in the 80s and what was popular were things like Obsession by Calvin Klein. That's a great example of the type of fragrance this is. It's in that sandbox, okay? Oriental, animalic. You know, it also reminds me a little bit of Musc de Cartier, right here. This is the Parfum version of Musc de Cartier. And the reason that I say it reminds me a little bit of Musc de Cartier is that greenness. So imagine if you took the greenness from Musc de Cartier, you took the powdery oriental animalic facet of vintage Calvin Klein Obsession for women or for men. They're both very similar fragrances. And you blended them together and you used even higher quality ingredients than Calvin Klein used in Obsession. Okay, the ingredients here smell even better than Calvin Klein Obsession. And, you know, you get the green galbanum, the fruity peach, the basil, the green basil, but it's all about the tonka and vanilla and civet in the base, and labdanum. It's a pure oriental, and it's absolutely beautiful. It was issued for women. I think it works fantastic on a man today. Anyone can wear this. Value for money is through the roof. I got 2 bottles, and these are 100 ml bottles. I got 2 bottles for $80 last year. 2. 1 EDT, 1 EDP. So it was 40 bucks a bottle. That is unbelievable value for the type of scent you're getting in Krazy Krizia. I don't understand the bottle. I don't understand the whole apple thing. I don't understand any of that. All I know is the scent is outstanding. If you're a fan of, you know, this kind of DNA, I would urge you to check out Krazy Krizia. Okay. 2 more Krizia fragrances back to back. One is going to be Krizia Moods Uomo. Now, there's been a little bit of a fracture in Fragcom over this fragrance. Excuse me. Some people say this is the greatest patchouli fragrance of all time. Some people say this is an overrated patchouli fragrance. I fall more on this is one of the greatest patchouli fragrances of all time, personally. But what you get is you basically get this spicy woody scent, highlight the patchouli, highlight the leather, highlight the oak moss. Everything is kind of highlighted from the 80s. It's 1989. It's discontinued, of course. That's what this fragrance, that's what this episode is about. Ramsey's ramblings on discontinued fragrances. All of these are discontinued. And again, this is another one you don't have to worry about versions. You don't have to worry about anything other than just finding a bottle. And bottles right now for 100 ml are going around $100, which is fantastic value, in my opinion, for a, you know, fragrance of Krizia Moods quality. Moods Uomo. I've never smelled the women's version. But Moods Uomo, there is some lavender, there is some old school carnation, there's some pepper, there's some jasmine, rose, lily of the valley, and ginger. But it's the heavy patchouli, heavy oak moss, and there's even supposedly an ambergris note in the base. Everything vintage 80s masculines with the patchouli amped up. That's what Krizia Moods Uomo is. It's intense, it's heavy. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love Krizia Moods Uomo. I do think it's one of the best patchouli dominant fragrances of all time. I mean, when you say patchouli, this is what I think of. I think of this, I think of Coromandel, I think of, you know, Amen, I think of Psychedelic, I think of fragrances like that. But this is, you know, I did a This Is Not a Top 10 Patchouli Fragrances. You can go check it out if you'd like. Video. I'm going to rank that video very soon. So I went back and I started to rank my This Is Not a Top 10 videos because originally they were just kind of thrown at you and out of order. And I did the Olabanum one already. I re-ranked that one. I'm going to re-rank the Patchouli one very soon where I put them in order of my favorites. And this will actually be very close to the top, if not the top patchouli. I mean, that's just my opinion. But again, there's been a rift in Fragcom. Some people agree with me, some people disagree with me. And if you disagree, it's okay. You know, I'm not the judging type, but I will say that if you're, if you're a patchouli lover, Krizia Moods Uomo is a must smell. And probably a safe blind buy if you're a patchouli lover and you love vintage masculines like I do. If you love the Bellamy's of the world, you know, if you love the Antaises of the world, if you love the Oscar de la Renta Pour Louise of the world, the 80s fragrances, you know, Calvin by Calvin Klein, check out Krizia Moods Uomo. I think it'll fit right into your rotation. Okay, the final Krizia fragrance. The one that, I got some on my fingers earlier because I opened this and it kind of splashed on me, and it is a splash. It's a 50 ml splash of Teatro alla Scala. Now, this is the Eau de Toilette. I also have the Eau de Parfum. I love them both equally. They're both discontinued. This is one of the best, okay? I'm not going to mince words here. 100%, this is how I feel. This is one of the best animalic chiffre fragrances money can buy. Okay, if you like animalic chiffre fragrances, you know, Teatro alla Scala is the opera house in Milan. And it's the opera house at Alla Scala, I believe, is what that translates to. And it is, imagine you took a 80s chiffre and you added big notes of aldehydes, beeswax, it's like honey, resinous. The florals are just decadent. That's the best word for the florals here. They're decadent. And the dry down with that benzoin, frankincense, civet. The civet note used here is one of the most intelligently used civet notes of any animalic chiffre I've ever smelled in my life, ever. It is absolutely amazing. I bought 2 backup bottles of the EDP because I had to have more, but it's in the same, it came out in 86. Chanel's Coco, I think, came out in 84 or 85. So it's in that, you know, if you think about things like Ungaro Diva, Chanel Coco, you know, those kind of fragrances. Paco Rabanne La Nuit is another one for women. The EDP or the EDT, it doesn't matter. They're in that same ballpark. But this is, it will floor you. It'll knock you on your ass. Teatro alla Scala is absolutely, it's absolutely amazing for a perfume lover. Finding that, go watch my first impression video on that, by the way. I also did a comparison between the EDT and the EDP in one of my videos. So I have a couple Teatro alla Scala videos out, but one day I will do a full review. I'm just not ready yet. Okay, now, this fragrance and this version, this video, Ramsey's Ramblings on Discontinued Fragrances, is not just about discontinued fragrances themselves. It's also about discontinued versions, okay? Or reformulated versions, or different distributors, or stuff like that. So we're going to talk about a fragrance that's not discontinued, but to me, it might as well be. It's this. It's Frederic Malle's Musc Ravageur. And you may be saying to yourself, why is he talking about Musc Ravageur? It's still available for purchase, and that's true. But it's not still available for purchase in the matte cap version. The matte cap version is the one that I prefer. I have both. I have a decant of the newer Frederic Malle bottles that the cap looks like this. This is Rose and Queer, just as an example. But this is what the newer Frederic Malle cap looks like. Editions de Parfums Frederic Malle. And this is what the old one looks like. So they call it the matte cap version because the new cap is shiny and the old cap is matte, okay? And this is the one that has the more animalic musk. So the new one is almost like smelling a Cinnabon. You ever been to a Cinnabon where it's, you know, gourmand, it's sweet, you know, it smells like a cinnamon roll, if you will. This has more animalic musks. It's a little bit dirtier. So if you like dirty fragrances like I do, if you are a fan of, you know, having a, if you're a fan of having a little bit of dirt to your perfumes, if you like that challenge, if you like the, if you don't like everything super clean, you know, there are some people that like them super clean, and there are some people that like them to have a twist. You know, they like to be challenged. They like to wear the Koros, the Antea, stuff like that. That's me. I like the dirty stuff. I like the animalic fragrances. I like the civet, the castoreum, the hyrax, the animalic ambergris, stuff like that. then this is the version of Musk Ravageur that you want. Maurice Roussel's Musk Ravageur in the matte cap. That's the one that you want to look for. You can still find these floating around sometimes. And it is absolutely beautiful in the winter. I mean, it just is. It is, it's encompassing, it's warm. There is a little bit of a gourmand facet to this. But that animalic musk in the base is just different. It just is. I mean, I'll do a comparison video one day. I have a decant of the modern stuff, and it's just not the same. So that's why Musk Ravageur is on the list for the vintage version. Next, we're going to a discontinued perfume, and it's called Lanvin My Sin. So Lanvin is a house that came out with a couple amazing fragrances in the 20s. We'll talk about another one they put out in the 20s on the next version of Ramsey's Ramblings. But we're going to talk about My Sin first because it came out in 1924. And you can tell this bottle is old. I mean, look at the cardboard inside, right? And so this is, yeah, look at the cardboard inside. That just screams old. I think it's probably from the 50s or 60s, but I'm not 100% sure. So this is My Sin, and this is an animalic floral fragrance, okay? So you can see the back right there. And My Sin is, it opens up smelling a little bit like an aldehydic floral, like you're going to go down Chanel No. 5 route, but it's even better than Chanel No. 5 to me because it's much more interesting. Chanel No. 5 gets a little bit boring to me. This has a lot more going on. There's spices, there's clove, there's a narcissus floral, mixes with orris root and lilac. There's in the base, there's animalic civet, which keeps it interesting. I love that. You notice I keep saying over and over again, the animalic notes are what really gets me. And this has that. It's called My Sin, after all. If you go look at the advertisements for My Sin, you'll kind of get an idea of why. And there's some oriental-like notes, too, in the base. You're hit with styrax, tolu balsam, vanilla, vetiver, musk, even a little bit of woods. I don't know what the woods are, but it's probably cedarwood, sandalwood, something like that. But this is an absolute classic. And if you ever want to hear the story behind it, there is a Roja Dove video he did on the history of perfume. Perfume Society, I think, put it on. And I think it's literally called The History of Perfume or something like that. But Roja Dove gave an hour speech where he talks a little bit about popular fragrances, you know, over the times and how it all came about and stuff like that. And this is one of the ones that he talks about as one of the most influential fragrances from the 1920s. And the advertising campaign, the way it was marketed, the way that the public took to it, it's a very important fragrance to have and to understand. So My Sin is the next one. Now, staying with the house of Lanvin, this is a fragrance that I don't have a full bottle, but a decant was sent to me by a friend. You know who you are. Thank you very much. This is called Figaro. And Figaro, look at the man right there on the front. He is fresh. He's clean. Maybe he just had a shave at the barber, which men used to do in the 1960s. This came out in 1964. Lanvin also had a fragrance that came out right around the same time, and it was called Monsieur Lanvin. And I actually prefer that one a little bit more to Figaro because the narcotic florals, the animalic civet in the base is even more in Monsieur Lanvin. But Figaro is still a fantastic fragrance, and I will talk about it some more very soon. It's a little bit more fresh, it's clean, it's citrus, it's lavender, you just had a fresh shave. You know, there is a little bit of civet here, but it's much more intelligently dosed, okay, than what you get in Lanvin Monsieur, which I actually like more. I like someone just dumping in a load of civet. But Figaro is kind of a hidden gem right now. It's very hard to find. It was not necessarily a limited run, but I think it got discontinued earliest of the 3 Lanvin fragrances that came out in 1964, because in 1964, Lanvin was trying to almost present itself as a worldwide house. They were trying to step out of the shadow of just being a French house, and they were trying to distribute their fragrances worldwide, specifically America. And I think they signed a deal with Charles of the Ritz. And Charles of the Ritz agreed to be their distributor. And so they did this launch. I think the 3rd fragrance outside of Figaro and Monsieur Lanvin was Vetiver. So I think there's 3 of them. But this is one of the hardest to find because it got discontinued the earliest. So thank you very much for sending it to me. You guys honestly are way, way above any expectations I ever had when I started doing this. The kindness that you guys have shown me, you know, sending stuff for me to try is just out of this world. Amazing. Now, we're going to talk about a fragrance that was discontinued, brought back, discontinued again. It's one of the best leather fragrances of all time, or it's one of the most influential. I love it. I absolutely love this fragrance. And I think if you're going to understand leather fragrances of the past, you have to have this. It's just, you know, whether it's up your alley right now or not, you have to have it. And it's called Robert Piguet's Bandit. Now, this is a vintage splash eau de toilette, and you can see the batch code there on the bottom. That's how they used to do it in the good old days. So this is a vintage splash eau de toilette. Bandit originally came out in 1944. And, you know, it is a Baroque, heavy, deep, almost like tobacco-y leather with, there's lots of floral notes in here, but they're just so consumed by the leather, the vetiver, the civet, the castoreum, all of that stuff. It is heavy, it's intense. This is right around the time where, you know, the women's movement as far as being more free, if they wanted to go out and, you know, smoke, or if they wanted to go out and they didn't need their husband's opinion, you know, they didn't need their husband's approval anymore. The women of society in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were progressively becoming more and more free and more open. And that's what this fragrance reminds me of. You know, there are a couple fragrances that, you know, will do this stance as far as, in my mind, I think about the time and I think about the political movement of the time. And every time I wear this, I'm just reminded of like a woman in a mink coat, smoking an expensive cigarette with that long thing they used to put it in. And, you know, there is a Molinard fragrance, and all of a sudden the name escapes me. Molinard Habanita. Habanita came out in the 20s, and it was also a little bit about, you know, women smoking tobacco. I get the same vibe for some reason with this one, with Bandit, even though they do completely different things. This is more about leather. Habanita was more about, you know, the tobacco and oriental ambers and stuff like that. Somehow they're linked in my mind. And I guess it's just the rough and tumble way that the leather is used. And this is a fragrance that was marketed towards women. God bless the women of the 1940s who used to wear this. Then it got discontinued. Then, you know, there was a Parfum and there was an eau de toilette. They brought out an eau de parfum a decade ago in 2012. Parfumo says even that newer version is discontinued. So I think it's completely discontinued now. If anyone knows for sure, though, do let me know. But just to err on the side of safety, if you're interested in picking up a bottle of Bandit, I would do it. I would do it while there are still some, you know, dead stock, leftover stock lying around. Okay, now we're going to talk about two sweet fragrances. One I can't stand. and one I actually really like. It's like a, guilty pleasure, if you will. The one that I can't stand, and I actually bought this at the I watched a video from Joy Amin from Bangladesh, and Joy loves sweet fragrances, and I learned early on that his taste and my taste don't go together. So when he talks amazing about a fragrance, I won't necessarily like it. Sometimes he says bad things about a fragrance, and I absolutely love it because he likes sweet fragrances, and I don't. This is Calvin Klein Reveal. Reveal is Reveal for men. Sorry, there's also a Reveal for women. Reveal is a brainchild of 3 perfumers and one of the most influential creative directors of all time. So it's Olivier Guillotine, Rodrigo Flores-Roux, Marie-Pierre Julien. Those are the 3 perfumers. And then Anne Gottlieb is the product developer, okay? So Anne Gottlieb is very hip with the time. She knows what's popular. She knows what sells, all that stuff. This opens up. It is a very unique fragrance for a designer. Listen to these notes. Pear brandy, candied ginger, Kiwano, mastic, agave, yes, that agave in tequila, clary sage, suede, amber, Haitian vetiver or pur, and tonka bean. And it is sweet, okay? It's sweet, it's strange. It's sweet and strange. And even though the strangeness underneath, I would love to get to know. I'd love to understand the whole, pear brandy, agave, Kiwano, very interesting notes. But that, designer sweetness. This came out in 2015. It's already discontinued. That designer sweetness, I just can't do it. It's just too much for me. I keep it around as a keepsake when sometimes right before bed, if I want to just have a spray to remind myself why I never want to spray it again, I will do that. Maybe one day I'll review it, but I'm staying impartial is going to be a little tough because I don't like sweet fragrances. But here's a sweet fragrance I do like. This came out a year later in 2016. It's also discontinued. I think it's one of the best Le Male flankers of all time. This is called Le Male Essence de Parfum. And Essence de Parfum is this sweet, leathery, it's basically leather and osmanthus with cardamom, tonka, and vanilla. And this bergamot and Georgie wood, which is a synthetic molecule in the opening. As far as this, I love leather. Leather is my kryptonite. And so sometimes if you put a sweet leather fragrance in front of me, I can get down with it. This one has suede, but the sweetness is too much. Even though the sweetness is probably too much in this one, I can at least stand it, okay? This is a designer that I could see myself wearing in the cooler weather. And, I found a bottle of this on FragranceBuy.ca. 125 mil for $60 Canadian, which is like 50 US. That's a good deal. But don't go pay $300 for this. I mean, you're buying a designer. It'll smell like a designer. Don't expect, don't expect anything, groundbreaking. It's a designer, but it's a very well done designer, especially for the crap they've been putting out in the last 10 years. Now, speaking of last 10 years, let's go back to 2007 before the crap they've been putting out in the last 10-year comment. And let's talk about a Francis Kurkdjian creation. It's called Fleur du Mal. Now, Fleur du Mal is one of Francis Kurkdjian's best works. It's also discontinued for a long time. And what makes this amazing is there's this fresh combination of chamomile, like chamomile tea, with orange blossom and neroli. And so it came out right at the same time as Amouage Reflection Man, 2007. And it's almost like designer version and niche version of, Reflection Man is the niche version. This is the designer version. But for a designer, a floral, masculine, look how it's got that, white, it's got that Kouros look to the bottle, but it smells nothing like Kouros. but it has that white, clean cleanliness. And instead of using civet, Francis Kirkjohn tried to use chamomile to kind of offset it. This, you know, clean neroli and orange blossom offset with basil, chamomile, and coumarin. And he did a very good job. This is a fantastic fragrance. I mean, it is floral, so you have to like florals, but it's a fantastic fragrance. 2 left, and the first one's going to be a Joop fragrance, and it is my favorite fragrance with the note of tomato leaf by far. Hands down, no questions asked. There's nothing that can compete with this as far as tomato leaf fragrances that I'm aware of, and this is called What About Adam. Now, What About Adam is, oh, it's so good. It is such a departure from what is popular or common, even in the 90s. Yes, it's a little fresh, but it has this deep, bitter tomato leaf note. And the bitterness is what I love about this fragrance, because it doesn't go sickly sweet. This is 1997 we're talking about. 25 years ago. 25 years ago, God. But it's so perfect for the summer because, I mean, look at the color of the juice. It has that green tinge to it, and that's what you get. You get that tomato leaf with mint. It's a little fruity because of the blackcurrant, but it's just so unique. It's such a special fragrance, and I mean, for summer, you want to smell something unique and different and make you stand out of the crowd. You want to be the person that goes against the grain. What About Adam is a must sniff. And as far as, you know, perfume composition goes, this is absolutely amazing. Khalees Becker did an amazing job on What About Adam, and you don't hear very many people talk about it, mostly because it's hard to find, number one. And number two, I think it's so weird. You know, that tomato leaf note is just outside of the normal expectations of a perfume indulging culture, that, you know, they're not going to be okay with this. This is for the, you know, this is for the real perfume head. This is for someone that wants to, you know, break down, understand something different. They want to experience a 90s fragrance that isn't an aquatic. You know, they understand the time and place and the artistry that goes into this fragrance. They will love it. That kind of person that goes against the grain will love What About Adam. And finally, Balenciaga. We talked about a few Balenciagas on previous episodes. We talked about Balenciaga Pour Homme. We talked about Cristobal Pour Homme for men. And we talked about Chilanga. Now we're going to talk about Le Dix, which I absolutely fell in love with wearing this to bed a couple times. And Le Dix, look at the design, the Balenciaga bees. It is absolutely stunning. Le Dix is a floral chiffre is basically what it is, with aldehydes in the opening. But you could maybe compare it to something like Chanel No. 5, Chanel No. 22, but I almost think this is better than both. This does something that you know, it just does something to me that I don't understand. The combination of the lilac, the iris, the jasmine, lily of the valley, rose with aldehydes and peach. There's a little bit of peachiness, okay? So it's like Mitsuko because it has that lilac peach combo that Mitsuko has, but it has that aldehydic floral that Chanel No. 5 has. But what makes this amazing is the base is resinous, okay? It's a proper chiffre. So you get the vetiver, you get the tonka, benzoin, sandalwood, amber, and musk, and it is stunning. This one shocked me. This is one of the freebies that Anuj sent me when I did my Enchante haul. It's a tester that he had, And this is a gem. This is a true gem. Forget marketed to women, marketed to men. Forget about that. Just as a piece of perfume history, Discontinued, of course, or it wouldn't be on this video. It is the very first Balenciaga perfume from 1947 as well. But this one really took me back. This is one that, again, I have to thank people like Aoud for, you know, he knows my collection. He knows what I have and don't have. And it, you know, you can't do this alone. There's too much. You just can't keep up with everything. It's impossible. So when someone says, hey, you know, you have to get your nose on this, and they send it to you, and you smell it, and you're like, wow. I mean, there's no way I would ever have smelled this if not for him. So that's why I say it takes a village sometimes when you're doing a channel like this, because there's just so much out there. You can't keep up with 1,000+ releases every single year. It's impossible for one person to do it. And when you find something that you love like this, sometimes you just have to stick with it and wear it. And, you know, this one really is, I've never heard anyone talk about it, ever. I like it better than Chilanga. I like it better than number 5, better than number 22 even, I think. I just absolutely fell in love with this fragrance, and I haven't even given it a full wear. I've only worn it to bed a couple times. So, Le Dix, put this on your list if you're a fan of aldehydic floral chiffre fragrances. It is stunning. So it might be a little hard to find. I don't know, but we kept it under an hour. So if you have experience with some of these discontinued versions or discontinued fragrances, or if you have experience with the different versions of Musk Ravageur, stuff like that, let me know in the comments. I love seeing your faces, love hearing your thoughts. And hopefully I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I think I've got to go into the office tomorrow, so I may not be able to make a video tomorrow, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best. And so, like I always say, a like, a subscription, and a comment always helps the channel. But again, that's not why we're doing this. You know, I'm not running this channel as a business or anything like that. This is a pure hobby for me. And, you know, it is all about sharing that passion with you guys. So, you know, I'm not going to harp on likes and subscriptions and stuff like that. I don't care. If one person was watching this, I would still do it. If it even helps one person, I would do it. That's the way that I view this, you know. I'm not doing it to be YouTube famous or anything like that, but it does feel good when you see the likes and you see the comments and the people interacting. I mean, that does give you a little bit of reinforcement, you know, that you're on the right track. People are appreciating what you're putting out. So anyways, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Episode 4 of Ramsey's ramblings on vintage discontinued perfumes are in the books. Cheers, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye, guys.